Whoa! Happy New Year! Special Keiser report with the one and only Gerald Celente, originator of the Trends Forecast, man who knows stuff.
We spend every New Year's Eve with Gerald Celente if he will have us, even if he won't have us. We just hang outside his house and say, hey, Gerald, let us in, let us in. Gerald, welcome to Keiser Report.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. I admire both of you so much for all that you do and the information that you give the people around the world. Thank you so much for having me.
We've lived through another year, 2021, and we're heading into 2022. I suppose we'll kind of look back on 2021 as we head into 2022 with you. The biggest trend that you report on in the Trends Journal right now is, of course, the C word, which alternative media such as ourselves are not allowed to mention anywhere on social media, including YouTube, where this is also broadcast, or Twitter. We can't mention the C word. And even, the fact that the total economy, the financial system, the monetary system have been totally re-engineered. We've been flooded with trillions upon trillions and trillions of dollars of new money to fix this C word situation we're in. The fact that we can't really talk about it here, let's talk about that trend. And don't mention the C word. You can say pandemic, I guess. But the fact that we have this weird situation of a sort of Orwellian moment, what does this tell you?
Well, one of the things, look what's going to happen with the global economy as they're forcing people to do what they don't want to do, and they're excluded from going out and traveling. Take a look at the data, and this is from the Wall Street Journal back in the beginning of this month, and Happy New Year to everyone and to you and Max. The bookings between the United States and Europe for the week starting November 29th, and this is going into mid-December, we're down 77% from the 2019 levels. Down 77%. JP Morgan announced, we're not going to have our big health conference in San Francisco. We're going to do it by Zoom, or don't worry about all the restaurants, all the hotels, all the businesses, the taxes that come in with conventions and trade shows. They're gone. You're looking at office occupancy rate in America at 40%. That means 60% aren't coming in. What happens to all those businesses? And now, with the fear that's spread with the new C word that came out, the moronic part, look what they did during Christmas holidays, all over the Western world. Oh, and China? Oh, China's doing great. Did you see their numbers coming in? Oh, yeah, consumer spending is down. Housing is down. Numbers are going down. They're all locked up. No travel. So this is very serious. We think one of the big trends that we're looking at in 2022, they're saying stagflation. We call it dragflation. The economy is going to drag down, and inflation is going to keep going up. And when you're looking, by the way, John Williams Shadow Stats, who I admire his work, because they rigged the inflation numbers. Housing isn't included. Oh, you're not eating steak anymore. Oh, yeah, but you're eating ground beef. It didn't go up. The prices didn't go up. So they rigged the prices for two reasons. So they could keep interest rates low and the gamblers could keep gambling. And so they don't have to pay more people Social Security because it's geared toward inflation rates. The real inflation rate is about 15%. So when you're looking at interest rates, you have negative interest rates. So now they're going to raise interest rates. So they're going to raise them. Maybe they'll raise them, to 3/4 of Fed rate, about 0.75%. They're even afraid to do that because they can't stop the flow of cheap money. So we see this thing going down and inflation going up, dragflation, not stagflation. And just quickly, look how they lied to us. Or they either lied or they got to be the dumbest people on earth. Let's go back a year ago, December. Listen to Jerome Powell, the Fed head. Oh, this inflation's nothing. Oh, it's only temporary. Oh, no, no, no. From temporary, it went to transitory. And now they're saying, well, because of the supply chain disruptions and other things, it's not supply chain disruptions. That's that much of it. It's all this cheap money you're dumping into the system that's artificially propped it up.
You said something interesting there about the reason interest rates are low is to keep the speculator speculating. And that's a point people overlook. They are told that the reason interest rates are low is to stimulate the economy and to stimulate job growth and to stimulate the GDP. But we know actually the reverse is true, that by keeping rates artificially low, they are stymieing job growth, they are killing the economy. And as you point out, it's purely for the benefit of those who borrow at those low rates, and they speculate in the financial markets, which are now magnitudes bigger than the real economy. And when they make a bad bet, they get bailed out. When they make a good bet, they keep the proceeds. What's interesting, Gerald, is that they were able to hide the inflation for a long time, as you point out, by using hedonic adjustments and substituting hamburger for steak or bugs for steak now. But now we've got a situation where it's obvious that prices are running away. People notice it for groceries and for energy. So Jay Powell, when he's testifying before Congress and saying that they're thinking about maybe raising rates at some point if they see some inflation, it's clear now to the population that this man is a tyrant, essentially. To put it into historical terms, you'd have to go back to Benedict Arnold to find somebody in American life who was so obviously and patently undermining the integrity of our government and our way of life, Gerald.
You said most people. No, the people that listen to you and Stacy, and the people that, the Mark Morses and the George Gammons, myself, we're a minority. Most people believe the BS. And of course, the mainstream media keeps repeating it. This is the worst that the Fed gang has done since they were invented by another murderous clown, that Woodrow Wilson, in 108 years. They've been lying to us and saying, oh, when inflation rate goes over 2%, a number they made up back around 2010, 2012. We made the number up 2%, and now it's way over 2%, and we're thinking about it. We're not too sure, but we'll let you know.
You mentioned JP Morgan had canceled their big convention, the conference they were going to hold in San Francisco. And actually, not only was it some of the C word, restrictions, but most people were afraid to actually go. The attendees were afraid to go to San Francisco. Max and I don't. We refuse to go to San Francisco. And so let's talk about that, because we've used the quote from Bastiat all the time, paraphrasing Frederick Bastiat, saying that when plunder becomes a way of life for men at the top, they create a legal system and a moral system to justify it. And it seems like San Francisco is the epitome of that. Not only do you have Nancy Pelosi representing the region in the Congress, and she's arguing for insider trading by Congress, members of Congress, but you have the state of California has said we won't prosecute anybody who steals under $1,000. So you've seen just get woke, go broke for real happening in a wild way in California. And we have refugees fleeing that, heading to Texas, heading to Florida, heading out of those sort of states. What do you think? What's the trend with that?
You talked about California. The exodus rate it's off the charts. When people lose everything and have nothing left to lose, they lose it, and they're losing it, and they're losing it all around, all across the country and around the world. Again, the rich got richer, as Max was saying. They use the cheap money to buy things and artificially. Merger and acquisition activities at an all-time high. Why don't people want to go back to work? Where do I want to go to work? I want to work with Home Depot? No, I think Amazon. I like Dollar General. Where are you going to get a job? Starbucks. You get a job in Starbucks, you could be there for years. The new person coming in makes almost as much as you do, which equals next to nothing. How can you live on $12, $15 an hour? Look what's going on in the housing market. Oh, housing market's going up, but people can't afford to buy them. So the apartment rentals are going way up because they can't afford to buy. So the people that have, when they lock down things, people are saying to themselves, I don't want to go back to work. I don't want to do that anymore. I think I'll go steal and rob because they've been stealing and robbing from me. Why shouldn't I steal and rob from them?
Yeah, good point. And that's become plunder, a way of life, warned about by Frederick Bastiat. Oh, back in the 19th century. You know, something interesting is happening in the trend watch area, a secular move. You'd have to go back to the 1970s to find something similar. And that is the return of labor, organized labor, and a pushback by labor against the financial world. Typically, historically, economically, there's always been a pendulum swinging back between an overly financialized world like we saw in the 1920s, led to the 1930s, and a comeback of labor, you could call it. Now we've got from the Reaganism up until present day, the total financialization of the economy collapsing in 2008 and continuing to collapse today. But now there seems to be a movement toward labor. Is that a secular move? Is it going to be with us for a while? And where does it go?
It's one of our top trends for 2022, actually, unionization. And I mentioned Starbucks. They're the one that's leading the charge. You got Kellogg, Deere, and a number of companies. The people, it's a supply and demand issue. So now they could go on strike. Now they could demand not to work and demand more money because people can't find employees. So this is going to be with us a while. And that now also, and I'm not saying the right or wrong, the good or the bad, I'm putting the fact out, they're going to demand more money, right? Inflation keeps going up. Right. And again, even though they're demanding more money with inflation, as I said, if you use the fake inflation number at 6.8%, wages only went up 4.8%. So they're still down 2%. So they're going to keep fighting for this. Right. Because they have nothing to lose.
Krugman at the New York Times described that loss of wages as an improvement in wages. So here's a Nobel-winning economist you can't add or subtract, apparently. But I wanted to ask you about this labor, organized labor, because I've often said, and this is, I think, a position I've never heard anyone but myself make this position, that the minimum wage laws are the poor man's central bank. In other words, if you're on Wall Street and you get to borrow money at zero and make 15 to 20% a year without any risk, there's a counterbalance to that in terms of the people who are not on Wall Street. It's called minimum wage. I'm all for getting rid of the minimum wage and letting the free market determine wages if we can currently get rid of the central bank.
Gerald, I want to say we're going to come back in the second half. After this break, we're going to top up our champagne glasses for this New Year's Eve special, and we're going to come back with an answer. This is a cliffhanger, first ever on Keiser Report.
Welcome back to the Keiser Report. I'm Max Keiser. We're going to continue with our conversation with the one and only Gerald Celente, the way we left it before the break. I asked a question. I said I'm the only one that has this particular position that I know of, in that minimum wage is the poor man's central bank. In other words, I'm against minimum wage in a free market economy. I think free markets should determine prices. But in an economy that's governed by the central bank, which is a Politburo that sets the price of money, it's essentially American communism, you need to have a counterbalance called the minimum wage, or otherwise you're going to have slavelandia, as you call it. What do you think, Gerald?
What's the minimum wage? It's nothing. It's just a phony number they're throwing out there.
Right. Well, just to be clear,
they're doing something.
To adjust for the real inflation that you mentioned, the minimum wage in America would be now $60 an hour, which is a living wage. And that's the way it would be if there was any adherence to any economic principles outside of the delusional cacophony coming out of Paul Krugman that makes no sense, right, Gerald?
I'm totally against the government putting any kind of mandate on what the wage should be. And who are they to decide anything? Because tell me anything that they've done where you could show me a success rate. Oh, I know. The Afghan war, they did great on that one. No, you were talking about the Nobel Peace Prize. How about the Nobel Piece of Crap Prize? What was that guy, Obama, that got it? Yeah, I want that guy Gaddafi out of there. We're going to destroy Libya, the richest country in Africa, where people had more rights and benefits than a lot of Europeans. I want that guy Assad out of there in Syria. How about that guy over there in Ethiopia that they just gave the Nobel Peace of Crap Prize a gift to? Oh, yeah, the one that started the war against the Tigrays. And now you have the second most populated nation in Africa at war. So going back to the Nobel Prizes, They're Nobel pieces of crap. And the people that get them fit into that category, obviously. So again, in a free market economy, the government should be telling us nothing to do other than, I believe, I like the Sherman Antitrust Act, the Clayton Antitrust Act, the Glass-Steagall Act, the Robinson-Patman Act that prevented the bigs from monopolizing the country and now the world.
Let's follow on the two themes here. So first of all, you mentioned that the return of labor. Is this going to be a good thing? Is it a bad thing? And of course, the story of labor in America and capital versus labor is intricately tied to the situation with China. China took all our jobs because the capital sent all our jobs to China. So we see the Thucydides trap happening. Is there going to be a war with China? It looks like in the last weeks of this year of 2021, we saw a lot of like multi-front conflict starting to emerge between the declining empire and the rest of the world.
No, we don't see a war with China. As I said, the United States couldn't it was 80,000 Taliban. They couldn't win in Iraq. No, they're not going to touch China. And China's going to do what they want. One of our top trends for 2021 was China 2021. The 20th century was the American century, and the 21st century is going to be the Chinese, because the business of America has been war, and the business of China's business. They're going to do what they want. And of course, I'm not for it. I'm saying what it is. Who's going to stop them? They're going to take over Taiwan. They're going to do what they want. And now they're making a deal with Russia. So with China and Russia uniting, who's America going to unite with? Who's going to fight them? And again, no, I don't see it happening at all. And if they do go to war, it'll be that war when they asked Einstein what kind of weapons will be used to fight the Third World War. He said, I don't know, but they'll be using sticks and stones to fight the fourth.
Yeah, you mentioned Russia and China now coming together, and that's been in the works for quite some time. They have, of course, one road, one Belt Initiative, which is tying that whole region together, and it's part of an enormous economic zone that is going to be dominating for quite some time. The one wild card in the geopolitical arena, and this is pure speculation, but if you put Russia and China together, how tough is it going to be to put Germany in with those two?
Hey, Germany's not going to, they're interested in money. And I don't think that they'd go for the United States attacking Russia or getting involved in it. I think what we should be looking at also is what's going on in the Middle East, particularly with Turkey. With their lira has dropped 45% just this year alone against the dollar. Their real inflation rate is well over 40%. And one of the things I always say, when all else fails, they take you to war. And Erdogan has had a very good track record of doing that, the president, particularly with his popularity slumping. And so I'm concerned that we're going to start seeing more action breaking out with Turkey against other countries, particularly Syria, the Kurds. And the other one to look at, too, is what's going on with Israel and Iran with the nuclear deal. So to me, the concerns are with the war front are the Middle East. And again, what's going on in Africa, they don't make it in the news hardly at all. What's going on in Ethiopia is very important to look at. The whole Horn of Africa with Sudan. This is bedlam up there. And by the way, you want to see a migrant crisis happen? You haven't seen anything yet.
You mentioned that if we have a war with China, the next war will be fought with sticks and stones. But one of your trends for 2022 is, citizens, especially of the West, of a high surveillance state, high tech world, seeking low tech alternatives. And can you explore that trend further about a low tech future?
Yeah, simplicity. They've gone too tech and too many. We're talking about a supply chain disruption. Look what's happened with the automobiles. Once upon a time, they were very, very simple. And now something breaks down on your screen, and it's like a $6,000, $8,000 problem. The same thing with equipment. So now you're going to start seeing a lot of companies going back into simplicity. No, we don't have to make it that complicated. So you're going to start seeing that, and it would be a great entrepreneur opportunities. Do you know what the average price of an automobile now in America? $40,363. $40,000. Well, you're making $15 an hour, maybe? How are you going to afford that? No, they would be smart to be coming back with more simplistic automobiles and more simplistic equipment because they've gone way too high tech.
The used car market is trading at a premium to the new car market. And so that's very unusual. And it shows a market failure, right? Because there's no good price signals. And it gets back to money printing. So even if there was a return to a more simplistic automobile manufacturer, you still have the problem that the economy is awash in all this fiat money, and there's no way to pull it out. They can't raise rates because of what we discussed earlier. Structurally, the bond market won't tolerate it. So they can only go down. The question is, Gerald, are we heading into a hyperinflationary Weimar Republic collapse, or will it be a deflationary 1930s depression type collapse?
I think it'll be a combination in the sense that there'll be as I said, a dragflation. You're going to see the economy go down and inflation keep going up. And it's not going to go away. And will it be a Weimar Republic? I think more of that, in the sense that the standard of living is going to continue to decline dramatically. And again, you're going to start seeing a lot of conflict going on, new political parties being formed against the establishment. There are a lot of people that are totally disgusted with what's going on. And so I believe there's going to be, as I said, dragflation, rising inflation, declining economy, declining living standards, and going back to an Occupy Wall Street mentality. One thing that came out of Occupy Wall Street was the 1%. No one ever talked about that before. And now the 1% are in total control, and you're going to start seeing rebellions going on. And again, goes back to the unionization.
All three of us lived through the stagflation of the 70s. What advice do you have for the Zoomers and the millennials? Of course, back then, we didn't have a surveillance state. We didn't have social media. We didn't have a metaverse to escape into. We didn't have fentanyl and all these sort of narcotics and high overdose deaths. So it's kind of a different scene and structure in the U.S. economy at the moment. But what sort of advice does Mr. Boogie give for them on this New Year's Eve?
Speaking only for myself, GSB, gold, silver, and Bitcoin. And you saw what happened in the middle of December when the Fed even came out and said they were going to raise rates. All of a sudden, boom, gold jumped back up again. Silver started gaining more strength. I'm bullish on silver, by the way, not so much as a safe haven, but them using it more and more in industry, particularly solar paneling and other things. And when you throw silver in all the computers and everything else, so that's my thing. And of course, there's nobody that knows Bitcoin. I mean, the guy, Max Keiser, is the number one cat on that field. He was the first to call it out. And so I'm totally on board with what Max has been saying on it. And I invest in it.
I read recently that during the pandemic and people were locked up at home, a lot of people took up new hobbies. And one of those hobbies, became very popular. People started to cultivate plants at home. And this story was about people have become addicted to their plants, and they're going broke taking care of their plants. And I notice you're sitting in a set right now, and you're surrounded by plants. Have you developed a plant addiction, Gerald?
No, I have about 300 plants in my office.
And that's normal?
And the reason I do is I try to surround myself with beauty and get my mind off all the ugly crap going on. So I take care of the plants, and so that's why I do it.
And quickly on that thing you were just talking about, because Joe Biden this year, his administration did mention that sanctions against countries like Iran was more difficult because of Bitcoin. And I think that was a profound statement and kind of ties to your theme of a possible war and whether or not that might happen. Is if Bitcoin makes it impossible to have these sort of wars, it can bring some sort of peace. What do you think of that?
Nah, maniacs will do anything. They don't care about facts. And again, to me, it's the safe haven assets of what I'm looking at. And looking, I mentioned to you about 40% occupancy rate in office occupancy rate. What's going to happen to commercial real estate sector? Oh, and when interest rates go up, what's the debt level in the United States? Oh, it's only what, 30 trillion, and they just upped it again? You got to pay more money now when interest rates go up. What's going to happen to all the junk bonds? So you're looking at, when interest rates go up, all this debt level is going to explode.
Well, an explosion is a good way to pop the bubble into the 2022 year. We all look forward to speaking to you again.
And Happy New Year.
Mr. Boogie himself. Thanks for watching Keiser Report New Year's Eve special show with Gerald Celente, Max Keiser, Stacy Herbert. Until next year, bye, y'all.
And so, believe it or not, I think you all get it. It literally, I guess I know you all know it. I'm sorry to go on so long. Thank you.